Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Bear, Season 3, Episode 6. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, when we got to the credits, I had to rewind because I was like, wait, did that just say this was directed by Ayo Edebiri? And I was like, hell yeah, it did. I was like, that's so dope. It feels so poetic for her to direct a Tina episode. I was just so like, oh, that's a go Ayo. I was like, that's awesome. Once again, like I wish I need to do that more often, pay attention to like, oh, who's directing an episode and stuff like that. But it's like, because it's always a neat thing when it's like actors from the show directing it. That's always dope. So I thought that was pretty dope. Like her, I don't know if this is like one thing I haven't paid as much attention in previous episodes, so I don't know if this is the first episode she's ever directed. It feels very poetic if like her one episode she directs is like a very like character centric episode. And I do love that this show has been doing these, because obviously like last season we got the Marcus episode in Copenhagen, we got Richie with forks, and now we got Tina with napkins. And I didn't even think about it at the time, but truth be told is like tomorrow, which is the first episode of the season, it's a Carmi centric episode, and I guess I never really thought about it until I was watching. It's like, oh yeah, that pretty much was a Carmi episode. But I do like that we get these episodes that kind of just revolve around one. They're like heavily it's always been a character driven show, but it's like specific episodes being like one character driven. So us getting a little flashback to Tina, because we know nothing about Tina, so getting to learn a little bit more about her. I wasn't even quite sure. Well, she was kind of like a data entry person. Like she had like a regular like desk 9-to-5 job where she put information into like a timesheet and stuff like that. Like she handled stuff like that, and sadly she got let go from her job. She was there for 15 years, kind of got let go, and it's coming at the worst time because her husband, we saw the name tag, so the character's name is David, funny enough, because once again the actor's name is David Zayas, which I never talked about it in episode 1. I was like, I referenced, I was like, is that David Zayas? Is he playing her husband? It's like, yeah, he is. Thing I best know him for is like playing Angel from Dexter, because I think that's even more clear in my head too, because it's like, well, he was also like in the, well, slight spoilers, but he popped up for a bit in the continuation series New Blood. But either way, tangents and all that aside, he's a doorman. He's trying to wait for advancement in work, and so Tina's scared because rent just went up, and it's like, I don't know if we're going to make it. And it parallels beautifully, because you can tell Tina's kind of worried about things right now, I think, with the restaurant, but who knows what else might be happening in her personal life that might be coinciding. So this episode, flashing back, is giving you insight to understand Tina a little bit more, how she got to where she is, a little bit, and also, like I said, I think there is a parallel between her kind of, you could tell like there are moments where she just pauses and stops with just everything that's going on at the Bear. I think it's taking its toll on her, and like I said, I feel like we got a lot of insight into her that can give us more insight into kind of what she's thinking present day. But either way, yeah, losing her job. I mean, even like she waited till like she was laying in bed before she told her husband. She's like, you up? It's like, can I tell you something? I lost my job. And so Tina's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna find a job, because she's like, she cannot not work. I know that's a double negative, I'm sorry, but she loves the routine of it, which I'm like, okay, so it's something, it feels like a lot of characters find that in, whether it was the Beef or whether it's the Bear, the routine of it. That's why Carmi he has a very complicated relationship with cooking, but it's like, that's why he likes the kitchen so much, is because the consistency, and it seems like Tina appreciates that too, the routine. And that, to me, like with conversations near the end of the episode, I think that also gives some insight into why she was so against, much like Richie, Richie's reason for not wanting the Beef to change is because he found consistency and routine in it, but it's also, hey, Mikey was like the heart and soul of this place. This place is Mikey. So you changing stuff, you're getting rid of whatever's left of Mikey. That's clear. But I think Tina was in a similar boat, but also like the routine, the Beef was like the first routine she had after losing her job, and to have that kind of taken away from her, which I think leads into some of the stuff she has, the beef she has with Sid, which I'll get to in a second, kind of tying that in with, yeah, she puts out her resume, and it's kind of that thing of, you've been working a job for so long, and obviously like, oh, like, it's like, oh, she comes in like, oh, here's my resume. It's like, oh, you could have just filled that out on LinkedIn. I've never used LinkedIn. I'm literally just turned 32. So I've never used LinkedIn for a job situation. So that's never really something I've kind of utilized. So I wouldn't even really know how to go about approaching a LinkedIn situation, even though that would be like a younger generation thing. I still wouldn't even know how to approach that. So, but I guess that's like how everyone kind of does it nowadays. So once again, she's been on the workforce for the past 15 years at a specific job. So it's like, yeah, this wasn't around when I was like doing a job. It's like having to start over, as she even says, like she's 46, having to start over like kind of career wise is kind of rough, you know, because you're like, I mean, but she's looking for every opportunity, and at every job she goes to, who's there that she's talking to? Young people. Now, this is where I'm going to tie into the Sid stuff, because I was like, oh, is that why? I was like, to me, I think that explains why she hated Sid so much. What she's talking about, like, hey, look out for, like, you know, people with, like, notebooks and stuff like that. Why she had such beef with Sid, because, like, everywhere she went, it was representative of these young people, and I can't get a job because I'm from an older generation, and these young people, like, especially that one dude at that one job, how he like talked to Tina. I was like, yo, we'll get to that in a second, but it's like, it's very reflective of, oh, like, I was like, when she looks at Sid, all she sees are these young people who she had beef with, which there's more exploration into like her hating them, but also feeling jealous toward them. But we'll get to that when we get to that conversation later. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it. Like the jealousy of they were hungry. And I was like, that's so prophetic too, because Tina was even saying like, yo, I don't need like an inspiration. I don't need like a dream or whatever. I just need a job. But look at Tina now. Like, even just her journey in season 1, she became inspired. She's like, yo, my game is up, because she, like, Sid lit that spark in her like no one else. It's just kind of, she was kind of coasting, just doing her own thing, vibing with what the beef was, but what it eventually became, along with it becoming the bear. Like, she hated the young starts, because it's like, yo, you guys don't know anything. I'm struggling to make ends meet when it comes to rent, when it comes to groceries. Like, none of these young bloods, none of them have actually gone through anything, like, haven't really gone through the stress that I've gone through. They don't know. But I'm also envious of these motherfuckers, because she's like, they're hungry and they're going for it. And it's like, I think that's what it is. And I think that's what brought Tina and Sid so close together, because those are hungry characters. Like, Sid is very ambitious and very impatient and very hungry, but Tina got that spark, that hunger back, because of Sid. So I'm like, I love, like I said, it gives you so much insight into Tina now, not even just present season, but it gives you so much insight to her whole character arc over the course of the show so far. So I'm like, I think that's so beautifully done in this episode. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like you are meant to infer so much from that, you know? But yeah, like I said, I was making a point of, she was trying to get a job at these different places and it just wasn't working, and she was getting frustrated because it's like sitting on my ass. It's like, I don't like doing anything. But even her husband's like, babe, I'm a doorman. Like, it's not that crazy of a job. But she's like, yeah, but you're still working. She's like, I can't even get a door. I can't even fucking open a door right now. Like, no matter what I'm doing, I'm putting out there, I'm grinding, trying to get a job, and it's not possible. And even that one job where she was like, oh my God, like, I'm doing the exact same thing at this job that I was doing at my previous job? Hell yeah. And they're like, okay, so do you have a BA? And she's like, what? Like, college? Is like, yeah, they basically want to raise people promotion-wise in company. I guess it makes sense, because that way you keep your employees motivated. Like, oh, if you make it so the jobs, like, those who get higher positions are mainly people from inside the company. You get people there to kind of have more company loyalty, I guess would be the justification. But it is sucky. It's like, whoa. I'm literally doing the same job that I did for 15 years, but because I don't have a BA, which I didn't need a BA for that job that I was working for 15 years, I can't do the same job now. I can't get the same job because I don't have a BA. And the lady's like, yeah, you might want to suggest taking night classes, because it's like, right, it's going to help you more likely, not even just this job, any job going forward. She's like, oh my God. Some places weren't hiring. Some places just never got back to her. And then the final nail in the coffin was like, oh yeah, like, she had like that hour interview thing. She was so excited and pumped for it, you know, and because her husband is trying to, you know, keep the positivity of, he's like, hey, don't worry. But she's like, babe, I get it. You don't want me to worry. But he's like, oh, am I failing? And she's like, no. It's just, she knows, she's like, I know we're financially in trouble. I've been without a job for a couple weeks. The last time we heard was like David being like, oh, like, babe, it's only been 2 weeks, so it's probably been even more longer by then. So she's worried, rent, everything, the stress of life. I mean, that is some real shit any and everyone can understand. I mean, I feel like most people, like, we're not talking about like the 1%ers and people who are well off. We're talking about people who are okay. I'm talking about people who are just like, wanting the whole thing, like, and they're not because a high statistic of like most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Like, very few people are just like, maybe that's based on like old statistics and stuff, but I feel like I remember that statistic, but that was a while back, so things could be different. But I'm like, most Americans, I don't know if this is even applicable to the world, but I think I remember like most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's just the way shit is. Inflation, stuff going up, the way the world works, sadly. And so it's like, right, she felt good about this interview and went in. And the thing is, like, that guy should have been a lot more empathetic, because I mean, I think that's the human condition itself. Like, the dude behind the computer is just like doing his thing, like, yo, oh yeah, that job position was like filled in yesterday. He's like, then why did you send me a message saying like, hey, come in for this job? You should have taken the post down if the position was already filled. That's inconsiderate to anyone else that might be coming in. Like I said, the human condition of, he's just kind of like, oh, like he's not even looking at her, he's doing work. I get it, you're in the middle of work, like. The thing is, this is a person talking to you. You should have taken time to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. To actually seem genuine. You just seemed like it was just so whatever. And, and when Tina finally called, Joe was like, oh, also tell them, fuck you. And he was like, oh, wow. Like, kind of like, wow, that lady is crazy. It's like, no, you were so inconsiderate. Because, like, part of your job, most jobs involve like some form of customer service. In that moment, you should have treated her like a person. Like, I'm so sorry. We'll take. You're right. I'll make you take that down. She's like, because we don't know what anyone else is going through. For one, we're as an audience member, you're extremely biased because you're like, yo, show Tina some goddamn respect. So there's that, but it's also, we know what Tina's struggling with, and we as people, we don't always put ourselves in other people's shoes a lot of time. We don't think like, oh, like this person's just in here for a job interview. We don't know their backstory. And it's like, it's not on you to know that, but it is something to be considerate of. Just be considerate of people sometimes. It won't kill you to take a couple seconds and be like, oh, I'm sorry. You want me to? I'll check again for you. He's like, no, I checked. It's like, at least be like, okay, I can double check for you to make sure there's no open position. It's like, I'm sorry, look, everything's been filled. At least everyone else has been cordial to some extent. They tried to be. Like, the person that was at that place, she was like, oh, okay. And he was like, oh, no, we don't have any job openings, but if you need anything, let me know. I was like, oh, but can you? No, I don't need your resume. It's like, some of that's awkward, but it's like, it's still better than his interaction with Tina, and especially because this was her last Hail Mary, and it kind of blew up in her face. And that's what I'm just saying. Like, you just need to be more aware of just how you're coming off across to people. And it was just very inconsiderate of that person. Once again, I get it. You're in the middle of your job, but your job does involve you interacting with people. So you should be at least a little bit more personable to at least be able to say like, hey, I'm sorry, and feel genuine when you're saying like, I'm sorry the position's filled, but you were just so like stilted about it, Either way, Tina found herself at the beef because she was like waiting for the bus, and she went in there. So we see Richie, we see Christopher, and we see who seems like that's Chucky. Because I kept being like, who the fuck is Chucky? It's like, oh, that's who Chucky is. Cause I was like, is that Chester? It's like, no, it's Chucky. Because I'm curious like who actually worked at the beef at that time. Like, because like Marcus has been working there for a couple years, but I don't know if he's there at this point in time. Like, is Gary there? We see Fack is there. I mean, Fack's connected to the family, so it makes so much sense why he would be there. But yeah, I love that Tina came in. Richie like gave her a cup of coffee, like on the house. They even it's like, oh, Marty, if you don't want, all right, Marty, you didn't show up, and they gave Marty's sandwich to Tina, and she's like, what's an Italian stuff? He's like, you know what an Italian dip is? He's like, yeah, this is basically Italian dip. So. And I love that, like, Tina went to, where they have, like, where the beef was originally set up, where they would have family. Like, she's sitting down at one of the tables and, dining in. And the background, I love just the focuses on Tina. I actually had to rewind because I got so distracted with the background that when Tina started crying, I was like, oh, shit. I had to rewind a little bit. But, yeah, like, Fack is on, Neil is, like, playing trying to get through one of the games, and Mikey's like, "You're not going to get through that." He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to see the wizard." Which even Richie was like, "Wait, you're going to see?" He's like, "All right, let me stick around, yo." Like, he was like, I think he was talking to Chi-Chi. He was like, "Yo, like, cover the register or whatever." And it's like, yeah, they're making fun of him, being like, "Yeah, he's not going to make it." And ultimately, he didn't. But at the same time, he dies in the game. Is at the same time, Tina is breaking down, and you feel so bad because you know, like, it's been a rough, not even day. This day was just the final. It was a straw that broke the camel's back. Like, Tina was going through it already, struggling, and now it's like, yeah. And then Richie's just kind of like, "Yo, you gotta talk to her. Like, tell her don't cry." It's like she's gonna scare away the customers. I'm like, "Richie, you insensitive fuck." Even Mike's like, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing, bro? What do you want me to tell her? Just like, oh, don't cry." He's like, "Yeah, but she'll scare off the customers." And you're saying that pretty loud, so that's so insensitive. But I love what happens. Mikey sits down and talks to her. It's interesting too because the name of this episode is Napkins. And it's interesting too because there was a whole Napkins conversation last episode, budgetary wise. But there's also ties back to season 1 where Tina and Carmi were talking in the season 1 finale about like, oh yeah, like there was a one time they ran out of napkins, and Tina was like, "Yo, you got to pay the napkin guy," and he was like, "What's the point? We're gonna run out tomorrow." And she was like, "That typically wasn't Mikey's perspective on things." So it's just interesting to tie that. I feel like that was specifically why this episode was called Napkins too, was to tie back into that conversation. But also, like, you get to see why Tina's so ride or die, and like she made it that same episode, that same conversation. She's like, "You know how much I love Mikey." You know, she said that previously, like, to Richie, but she also says in that moment to Carmen, and Carmen's like, "How much?" And she's like, "A lot." And it's like, understandably so, like, Mikey was the person who sat down to talk to her. And that, once again, that's Mikey's superpower. He was the dude. He even said to himself, he's like, "I don't like the restaurant cooking game, but I like the people." And that's what really, to him, like, really resonated. And he's a people person, just like Richie is, you know? Richie can come off like an asshole, but he's a people person too. But it was like, that was also the thing of Mikey had that, like, magnetic personality. I love we do tie, because I was noticing, I was like, oh yeah, Tina's got, like, the long hair. I was like, oh yeah, in that flashback with her and Mikey, like, she had long hair in episode 1. It's like, oh, we literally get this scene in this episode. It was just out of context in the first episode. I love tying that back in like that. But it's like, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he showed her, like, oh yeah, this is the thing. It's like, what's that supposed to be? He's like, "I have no idea. My brother's a chef." And he's like, yeah. He's like, "I'd give anything to, like, I'm envious of people who have that dream, who know what they're going to do. And not only that they're going to do it, that they're excellent at it." And it's like, that is something, there's something powerful about that. But anyway, they're talking about, you know, how things are kind of rough for each one of them. I love that, just like, "Well, you were crying." She was like, "I wasn't crying." She was like, "At least I wasn't sobbing." He's like, "Yeah, you're right. You weren't sobbing, but you were crying." She's like, "Okay, I might have been crying a little." But it's like, yeah, she's like, "I had the worst day." And he's like, "Yeah, my day's kind of a level of normal, you know, just averagely shitty." And he's like, she's like, "Oh yeah, I get that." He's like, "Yeah, but what if, like, you didn't realize that was your baseline?" And she was like, "Yeah, but that's kind of part of being human." He's like, "Kind of is, isn't it?" And just their conversations about the issues that he has. We got some interesting insight. They've always kept it vague about their dad, but, like, because of episode 4 of season 1, Jimmy talking about their dad made me think, like, oh, their dad died. Like, that was just a dream he was referencing, but I thought the dream, because it was like, oh, the last time you talked to him was like 20 years ago. I thought that was like 20 years ago, and that was sometime before he died. But if that was the case, Jimmy would have said, like, oh yeah, a little before he died or something like that. That would have been part of the conversation. So, but the entire time I've been watching this show, I just been under the impression, oh, their dad died. Mikey's like, nah, like, he just bailed. I was like, interesting. So it's kind of a similar thing with Marcus's dad, just kind of wasn't there in their lives. And so it makes you wonder, has he popped up at all since, like, Mikey died? Like, did that kind of bring him back into the fold, or what happened, you know? I mean, the fact is that even Jimmy's like, yeah, I haven't talked to him in like 20 years. Like, what happened that you're even, I mean, I guess it's like when you're cutting ties with when you cut ties with your immediate family, your wife, your children, you're going to cut ties with your brother too. So, but it was interesting hearing Mikey say, like, oh yeah, like, this family restaurant, it was my dad's, he ran it to the ground, whole bunch of unpaid bills, and then he split. You're like, there's something so generationally traumatic about that. And it's like weird to say that because, like, Carmi and Mikey, I guess arguably maybe I don't know what the age gap is, but it still could be like a generational gap even there. But what I mean is, what did their dad do? He ran the restaurant to the ground, it was up to Mikey to kind of piece things together. What did Mikey do? He kind of left a lot of shit for Carmen to pick up the pieces of, and he split in a, not even a metaphorical sense, in a literal sense, just in a different way than his dad did. So it's like, oh, that through line is kind of so fucking sad when you actually think about that. Like how it's just Mikey kind of did to Carmi what was kind of done to him by their dad. And even Mikey had this sad, because there was this whole conversation about dreams that Mikey was like, yeah, there was like this trip we went to on this thing as a kid, and he was like, I looked at this building. He's like, every floor was kind of its own thing, different people, jobs, and he was just so like, people, it's like what was so beautiful about it, it's like this is a group of people, like in each individual person, it's like they had a dream and they worked toward, and they all came together in this one building. Like everyone has their respective dreams, and it's kind of led him to this building. And Tina was like, oh, that's inspirational, right? He was like, nah, it was fucking depressing. And she's like, why? He's like, because even as a kid I recognized I could never have that, because that's not in the cards for me. Like I'm not in a position to have dreams and worry about shit like that. I've got a family to take care of. It's like your dad's not in the picture. Your mom is all kinds of messed up, and you got two little siblings to look after. So he was like, I knew from a very young age that life of like, oh, what's a dream? Like that doesn't mean shit to me, because it can't mean anything to me, because it's not meant to be me. I just know I'm going to be skipped over when it comes to that part of life. And I was like, yo, that's some real shit. But I think that's also why him and Tina connected so much. Because once again, it's like, we're not put the dream shit aside. Like, yo, this is real world stuff of, we just got to make it. We got to find a way through. We got to find a way forward. We got to grind. We got to make our way through in some shape or form. And so I think that's why they connected so much. And that's why, once again, not just the job opportunity, but like that conversation in general, and just their philosophies and their outlook on the world just influenced Tina so much, where she's just like, yo, like me and Mikey vibe, you know? I think that's also why she got along with Richie. I mean, you work in that environment long enough, you're just naturally going to get along with Richie, despite, well, it took some changes on Richie's part for him to get along with Sid, but and Nat, but still. But it's like, yeah, he offered you the free coffee. Him and Christopher like hooked you up with like the Italian sub and everything. So, but yeah, Mikey like offered her the job to be a line cook. He was like, yo, it's not glamorous, this place, like you'll leave it smelling like shit. It's just like, it's a lot. There's a, like, he's like, yo, it's a lot of yelling, but he's like, yeah, but like you'll have a lot of fun. He was like, you'll have so much fun. And some days the pay is shit, but other times like you walk away with stacks when it comes to tips. And so it's like, yeah, I need a new line cook. So he's like, yeah, this place kind of is like a dumpster fire because we just don't have enough people, which staffing issue ended up being something that obviously they had to deal with the while it was still the beef, while also while it was still the when they were working on it becoming the bear. One of the issues that Mikey brought up I thought was so interesting. He was like, yeah, the toilet's an issue. I was like, oh, so the toilet has always been fucked. Because I in my head I think of like season 1 they were dealing with it, season 2 they were dealing with it like 2 or 3 times, because Nat was dealing with it even in the season 2 finale. So I was like, oh shit, like the toilet's always been a fucked situation. So I love it's this through line throughout all 3 seasons so far has been like, yeah, the toilet has consistently been fucked. So that was just kind of an interesting insight. Also, like, we never got to see Mikey talk to Richie the way, like, Carmen talks to Richie. Because he was like, yo, Mikey, like, the soda machine is overflowing. He was like, all right, can you shut the fuck up? I'm like, that's what Carmen would say in that moment. You know, and it's just like, oh, let me deal with these animals. Like, you know, the fact is, it's like, anytime we've ever seen Mikey and Richie interact, it's never been like that. You've never heard him tell Richie, shut the fuck up. I mean, of course, they had like that best friend, like, there's no bad blood in them being like, yo, shut the fuck up. It's like, but it's like, we've only ever seen the good. I mean, that's still even Mikey joking and stuff, but like, even hearing Mikey tell him to shut the fuck up, you've never heard that. Like I said, that's such a Carmen thing to tell him to shut the fuck up, and him telling Carmi to shut the fuck up. So I just thought, like I said, just so much insight into these characters. And just for that moment where Tino felt good after talking to Mikey and just like taking a bite out of his sandwich, and it tasted so good. It was like when, I think it almost was very representative of when Tina tasted that sandwich that Carmi made. I think that was episode 1. Like, she tasted the sandwich, she was like, oh my god, this is good. or like she's tasted other stuff. There was other stuff she had tasted from Carmen. I feel like I might be misremembering, but I think it was a specific sandwich. So I wonder if that's supposed to be that through line there. But it's like, oh yeah, how did things go? And Tina's like, no, it went well. So I don't know if that's like a couple days later after she had already gotten a job at the B, because she pulls out the shirt. So I think her husband was thinking it was still connected to that interview she went to earlier. But it's like, yeah. Because even, I love that Tina tried to give him his resume. He's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with your resume? I'm supposed to use it to clean the toilet or something? He's like, fuck that, I don't need your resume. It's like, it was again, just Mikey had that personality and just, like I said, so magnetic. And it's just, it's just a fucking excellent, great episode. And just, I love these solo character episodes. I mean, the show in general just continues to be so great, but it's like, especially these solo, one character, like following one specific character episodes are so damn good. Because it's interesting too, because like obviously this is Tina's past and it would involve Mikey, but also like what was last season's episode 6? Oh yeah, Fishes, the Brazado family dinner, Christmas dinner, which is interesting too, because Mikey had talked about the fact is that, God, once again, I've never go by Mikey. Like I used to use one of my old email addresses. I could say that, like, it has Mikey in it. So, like, I used to have people call me, I've had family members call me Mikey. Like, I had one, like, cousin, but it's never been, like, a nickname I've ever, like, stuck with. I don't even have anyone call me, my mom calls me Mike sometimes. It's like, oh, that feels fucking weird sometimes. Because she, like, flips, I'm going on a tangent. So, it's just, like, once again, it's always that stupid thing where I get in my head when I'm, like, referring to a Michael or Mike or whatever, and I always get in my own head. It's like, it feels weird because it always feels like I'm talking in third person. Like, once again, I don't know if anyone else has that same issue when they're talking about something and the person or character has, like, the same name as them. And it's like, I get so, like, it's like a floating, like, thought in my head. I don't know. Either way, I'm going on this tangent. Mikey had talked about the fact is that despite like he had talked about like the element of when we're usually celebrating stuff like that, it's usually around food. And it's like, oh, is that really kind of a thing? And it's like, that's what he kind of started liking about it. And she's like, oh, you always believed that? And he's like, I'm starting to. Which I'm so curious. Because I'm about to say, like, this is which is so interesting for him to say that, considering, like, this is definitely post. Well, I was about to say, is like, it would be post the dinner, wouldn't it? Because this is like I think this is supposed to be like 2018, so this would have been post the Brazado said Christmas thing, so. That's why I was also thinking, like, oh, your association with food has got to be fucked. Just like cannolis were kind of fucked for Carmi because of that same dinner. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be a communal thing, a family get together and like celebrations and stuff like that. But also food for you is also associated with like your family dysfunction, especially when your mom is like the chaos of her kitchen and kind of reflects like the chaos of your restaurant. Like, there's a lot that can be attributed there. Like I said, give you more insight into Mikey, but him even having that perspective, if especially this is supposed to be post that family get together, it's kind of like, oh, it's kind of for him to be like, I'm starting to think that way. Like I guess maybe for so long he's had the negative connotation because of meals like that, but maybe now he's trying to see it the other way around, or maybe this is pre that. Like I said, Carmen's already gone, but the thing is, Carmen was already gone before that family dinner. He just came back because he was in New York at the time. So this might actually it might be a thing of, no, Mikey has his perspective now, and then that gets completely tossed out the window because of the Brazado family dinner. I don't know. Like, once again, we're not clear on the timetable of like some of those flashbacks in episode 1. So like I said, it's just a great episode, and I'm just so excited to see what the next episode has in store for us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.